Hello, everyone. I'm happy to welcome you all online for the artist talk of Noor Abuarafeh. My name is Didem Yazıcı. I'm the director of gallery exhibitions at Yapı Kredi Culture Arts and Publishing, located in Istanbul. We're hosting the first solo exhibition of Noor Abuarafeh in Turkey, and the exhibition is titled Ways of Whispering, curated by my colleague Burcu Çimen and myself. So, before hearing Noor, I would like to say a few words about her. Noor Abuarafeh is an artist, primarily works with video, performance, publications, and video installation. Her work addresses the memory, history, archive, and the possibilities of tracing absence. Abuarafeh's videos and performances are text-based and questions the complexity of history, how it's shaped, constructed, made, perceived, visualized, and understood, and consider how all these elements are related to fact and fiction and the possibility of imagining past when there are gaps in documentation. Our videos and socially engaged works are based on interviews, workshops, and other shared activities. So Noor Abuarafeh recently participated in the 59th Venice Biennale in 2022 and the 11th Berlin Biennial in 2020 and Sharjah Biennial Edition 13 in 2017. And Noor Abuarafeh lives and works in Jerusalem and Rotterdam. So welcome, Noor. And I would like to start with the question of archive, because your practice is really mainly based by looking to what is missing in the archive, and you're doing it through personal histories that are ignored by art history canons and gaps in historiography, and using oral history and collective memory. So there are so many, you have a lot of different methods, but the main thing is the gaps and missing in the archive. So how did this whole started, your interest, and how your practice today has been shaped?
Thank you so much, Didem, for the introduction. Yeah, my interest in archives started in 2013 when I realized that there is no art archive in Palestine, and actually there is no archive in general, because most of institutions were established after 1995, after the Oslo Accord. And the way that I think of the archive as an institution is very similar also to the way that I look at museums. And the opening of the first Palestinian museum in 2016 was an inspirational event for me, because this a museum opened as an empty museum. So thinking of archive, having no archive, and museum that is an empty museum was fascinating idea for me, in which how can we think of history without the element of preservation, for example. So a lot of or different artworks started with an archival photographs, and when I go to a museum or to an archival institution to look at their collections, it's more than I go to look at their collection. I think of what is missing, and it's not necessarily what objects are missing or what photographs are missing, but it's more which narratives are missing, or how this collection of photographs or collection of objects are manipulated to create a different narrative. So what I do is I somehow create an imagined narrative. I wouldn't say it's a fictional narrative, but it's an imagined narrative, assuming that it might happen in the past, but it was never documented. So yeah, it happened that different artworks started with photographs, and my interest of archive is coming of not having an archive, or it's like my interest in archive is coming out of my non-interest of archive.
So non-archive, archive, maybe one could say. I think, while you were speaking, I'm thinking about an artwork that is exhibited in the exhibition, which is called Am I the Ageless Object at the museum. So I want to take a moment to show briefly images from the video from our exhibition book. And in this particular piece, we are looking at similarities between, as an institution, museum, graveyards, and zoo. And these three institutional structures have a lot in common that we actually learn or get. We recognize this through your video. Could you tell us more about the similarities?
Yeah, in this work, I was thinking about these three locations. Even before this work, I was thinking about these three locations without knowing where this work is going. And I was interested in zoos because historically zoos came before museums, and it was a collection of animals to show power of the places that are conquered. And then it was changed to contain dead objects, that it was called a cabinet of curiosity, and then it was the museums. And yeah, I mean, I was very much interested in what happened when we put something on display, even if it's an animal that is on display, to give more information and the background of the environment that this animal lives in. And I think that the common thing between these three locations is that there is something on display all the time, and also it's a replacement of where things or living beings are functioning and where they can't function anymore. And the moment that you put an object in a museum, it means that I think it means that it's a dead object because it's not functioning anymore. And the same as the zoo. I mean, these animals are not living in their environment. And of course, the same as the cemetery. So this was my main interest in this work, and also to think of who is the subject and who is the object, who is looking at who somehow, and also thinking of cemetery and the element of ghosts, for example, that what we think we're seeing, or that we are the ones who are looking, but we might be viewed from these ghosts at the same time.
I think from here, I would like to move to the exhibition and what you're saying about who is looking at who and this kind of power relationship. I would like to address the new work that you made for the exhibition, and perhaps tell also a little bit about the curatorial approach. So Yapı Kredi Culture, Arts and Publishing Gallery, we have 2 floors, and in the middle of the exhibition space, there is a huge white cube space. So for the first time, we started a new exhibition series called Together, and we're inviting each time an artist based in Turkey and an artist based outside Turkey to look at the similarities between the artistic practices, and we specifically invite artists who are working on the similar topics. And this time we invited Sena Başöz, based in Istanbul, and Noor Abuarafeh, and we ask artists to look at Selahattin Giz archive. And Selahattin Giz is a photographer from the early Republic time from Turkey, and basically both artists went to the archive and look at the photographs and basically created a new work. So there were also some photos from their visit to the archive. And of course, it was a challenge because Sena was in Istanbul and Noor then came later on. And we had a lot of communication. And I think that was a lot of work, but also a lot of pleasure to kind of navigate your conversation that Sena and you met for the first time, and basically looking at the same archive. And we never actually made the pressure that you created a new work, but the process happened so that you actually made new works, and both of your works are exhibited in this White Cube space. And you found those two brilliant photographs from the archive, and this power relationship, this question of who's looking at who is again represented in this photograph. So here we really don't know who the photographer is. Also, it's Selahattin Giz archive. It could be Selahattin Giz, but it could also be somebody else. So here is a woman surrounded by sculpture, so it's an open air space, and here it's basically a visit to an artist studio. And perhaps it could be interesting, Noor, to hear what was your journey navigating through the archive and basically working on these photographs, because you wrote texts on the photographs, and that makes the work.
Yes, I will answer your question, Didem, but I would like to add something to your previous question around the zoo museum and the cemetery, and also what is common in these places and what is I think crucial in my practice, and the question that I'm that I keep asking through at least maybe the 7 previous years, is that how can we remember without making a sharp distinction in time? And I think these through 3 places make a sharp division between past, present, and time. And I think it should be one process that is difficult to cut, and especially in a case like Palestine, where the past is very much present until now. So this work is more wider than speaking about Palestine, but it represents a lot what I think about history in Palestine, and that until now we are still living the sequences of the Nakba. So it's difficult to consider the past, for example, of Palestine that is before the Nakba, and what is after the Nakba is the present. I mean, in the Palestine, a lot of times when talking about the history of Palestine, that there is this division of the Nakba, what happened before the Nakba and what happened after the Nakba. So I think that I think of different ways of remembering the history without having these divisions. So how everything that is said now is relevant to the present moment. So, for example, I think maybe a radio can work better than a museum in a Palestinian case, when every narrative is spoken now, and it is relevant to the present moment. So this is something that I wanted to add. But to go back to your question, the way that I looked at that archive is because I'm also I'm a foreigner from the context of Istanbul, and I know the part of the history of Istanbul through when it is when the path of it intersect with Palestine. So the way that I approached this archive was I was not interested in searching for stories, and also thinking that it is a black and white photographs that usually are very heavily of nostalgic elements. I mean, in the fact that it is black and white, it's enough to attach it to a different era. So I was all the time thinking of it visually, and how to not fall in the trap of nostalgia. And I think it also helps that I have no connection with this archive. I mean, if I'm looking to archive coming from Palestine or about Palestine, it would be very difficult to resist this nostalgia, or to resist having stories coming from these photographs. But I took the advantage of not having this relation, and to look at these archives or these photographs in a fresh eye, and how can I see what I'm interested in these archives. And in this case, it was who is looking at who, and who is the subject, and who is the object.
You know, when you were speaking about your artistic practice, I was thinking that there are a lot of similarities between the curatorial practice, actually, because of course two are different, curating and art making, but I also think there are many similarities, being it's research based basically, but also kind of constructing, narrating, and looking at the history, but also bringing certain elements together. I think your practice has something really unique in that sense. It's research based, but it's also very personal. I was specifically thinking about that when you were saying, for example, if the museum model is the right model for Palestine, perhaps a radio is a better platform to speak about the history of Palestine. And I thought that's a very curatorial thinking. But it's and just as a minor comment, basically, I would like to come from here to another work in the exhibition. So one of the reasons that I invited you to Yapı Kredi Culture, Arts and Publishing is because Yapı Kredi is also a big publishing house, and we are printing so many books every year. And you, as an artist, working with books, and I found that really fascinating. You're contemporary artists, and books are for you medium, as an artistic medium. And we had the challenge, you did this fantastic research publication called Rumors, started a long time ago. And for me, it was very clear from the beginning, this book will be exhibited in the exhibition as a display item. But how to do it? It's originally in Arabic. So how to communicate this with a Turkish audience? and then you came up with a proposal and collaboration. Could you speak about your approach, like how literature is central in your artistic practice, and also this display questions that we dealt together?
Yeah, I mean, literature, I mean, I really like to read a lot of novels, and I think that it really influenced my practice, not only in when I make books and as an artworks, but also in the films that I make. And yeah, I find literature as a tool because it really helps me to speak freely about sensitive subjects that I can't make them, for example, as a film, because I will be mentioning a lot of names and it's based on interviews. And of course, when I make an interview that is filmed, people sometimes they change what they would say. And yeah, of course, they might not feel comfortable. So novels helped me, especially the novel The Earth Doesn't Tell Its Secrets. It helped me to speak about the creation of the first Palestinian museum. And when I say this, I don't mean the one that was opened in 2016, but the whole initiatives of establishing the first Palestinian museum. And in the novel, I fictionalize these. I create characters based on real people that I met, and sometimes they don't want their names to be mentioned. And I think it's the space of literature is a great space of creating these characters that can speak freely and that can contradict each other. So it's really, it's also, when I make the novel, I think a lot about it as a film as well. So for example, the Earth Doesn't Tell Its Secrets, it works as a loop film, even with the design. We spoke a lot with Inji Ali that I collaborated with her different time. And yeah, we talk a lot about how the design of the novel also functions somehow as a film. Yeah, so I mean, literature gives this freedom of saying whatever one wants to say, and it's very different than making a film and then asking the person if he or she would accept that this part would be viewed, especially when speaking about a sensitive subject.
When you say sensitive subjects, I'm thinking about the exhibition title. It was also a long but fruitful conversation that we together decided ways of whispering. And actually that whisper, the word, has a lot, it's really loaded because I will quote from you. In the book, we had an interview, actually a conversation between you and Sena Başöz, Burcu Çimen, and myself. And there we spoke about whisper, and you said, for me, the narratives that I'm constructing are like whispers. They are not mainstream narratives. Narratives that are not in archives or part of a museum. They have imagined narratives that were never documented. They're floating and whispering to those who want to listen. So there's something really, a very unique way in the whisper that is very subtle and very intimate. And you also said in the conversation that you can ignore a loud voice and place it as a background, but I believe it's difficult to put a whisper as a background. It brings curiosity or wanting to listen. So there's something really, really poetic about the whisper in the title. And again, you said when we were discussing the exhibition title, you know, we were saying, should it be Ways of Whisper or something else? And we were really saying, Ways of Whisper, there are no ways of whisper. So it's kind of also not existing, and it's playful, and it also makes, I think, most of your works and titles, it's also really, yeah, kind of playing around the reality. Perhaps we can slowly end with maybe you could tell us what you're working on currently, what you're doing. You are at the moment in Rotterdam. What topics you're working on, any direction, any project that you want to share?
Yes, now I'm working on 2 different projects that each one is now in a different level somehow. I'm working on a novel that it's still in the beginning phase. And the second is a film that I'm going to travel to Palestine to make the final shooting there. And it's about missing exhibitions from Palestine, 17 missing exhibitions, and the journey of where these artworks travel, and to try to understand where they ended up, in which country or which warehouse, but also to ask the question of what happens to our memory when things are missing, and what happened to these, what kind of meanings are given to these missing objects. So yes, it's these 2 artworks.
So looking forward to following your works in the near future, Noor. Thank you so much for your time and accepting our exhibition invitation and making this exhibition together. I would also like to thank Burcu Çimen. She is not here today, but we curate the exhibition together. But of course, Didem Yazıcı and Mine Bölen, who made this event possible. Thank you so much. You don't see their faces, but they're behind the cameras, coordinating and conceptualizing this. And we are a big team at Yapı Kredi. I would also like to thank Füsun Yalçınkaya. She is the editor of this wonderful book, Ways of Whispering. And when you turn the book, you see possibilities of healing, Sena Başöz, just like the exhibition. And of course, to Tülay Güngen, she is the general manager of the whole Yapı Kredi. Thanks also to her being so open-minded and supportive in every sense. And of course, thank you to everybody who made it until the end and joined our conversation, and hope to see you in another event.
Thank you, Didem. And also, of course, thanks to Burcu. It was a great pleasure to work with you. And yeah, it was also great to have great conversations with you both, and also with Sena. I mean, it was very inspiring for me.